Hello, welcome back to the channel.
Another The English Couple episode.
And today we are in the kitchen.
I think they can see that.
Yes, they can probably see that. We thought, as we are the English couple, we would have a look at some of jolly old England's, and actually this book here is about Britain as well, but customs, the customs of England from old times and the ceremonies that went with it.
It's very interesting.
And it's only when you look back in a book like that, sort of encyclopedic book, that you realise just how many of these wonderful traditional customs and things that we used, rituals and things that we used to get up to, that we no longer do anymore.
I was going to say that I knew so little of.
And I've got a
Shamefully.
couple of these books, these sort of things which tell you about these things. And every time I poke my nose into them, I think to myself, you don't see that anymore. Nothing like that has happened. We made a vague list. I mean, you know.
A vague list. It's quite a long list.
It's a longish list of stuff that was done. And we thought we'd just talk about some of them, because I'm sure wherever you are, and whatever part of the world that you're watching this, you know, we're talking about England specifically, but wherever...
some of these things are, do
Universal?
travel. Yeah. Lots of different cultures have done similar because, we all kind of
Yeah. And
come from a
especially
tribal thing, don't we?
I would imagine that some of our customs and things have travelled because of things like the empire, where we went out and went forth and people started doing it, and then variants on things would have happened. But also, of course, we've accepted in this country from the rest of the world as people have come over and stayed, and they've brought some of their practices and rituals. That's all been part of the overall... what would you call it? The general...
Multicultural
Yes.
Britain?
Well, I was trying to avoid saying that, but...
Sorry, I said it.
Just part of the mix. Yeah, mix. Part of the mix.
So-
It's lovely, nice little...
So no buzzwords then?
No.
Okay.
I hate those buzzwords.
Dang.
But no doubt, having said that, I will now be hypocritical and
Say some.
yes.
Do you know, I find it really interesting because there are, I'm sure, quite a lot of little bits and bobs of these customs that still actually just
Feed in.
show a little bit here and there in the tapestry of current Britain. Because like there's the nursery rhyme, oranges and lemons, say the bells of St Clements. That comes from a giving of the oranges and lemons in May, on a Sunday in May.
Why would you give an orange in May?
I didn't get that far reading it.
Oh, okay. I was going to say,
But
because
I'm gonna learn.
oranges clearly are not native to this country.
No, but it might hark back to
But
relatively recently.
in warmer times, and we did have warmer times, this is what a lot of people don't really remember, but of course there
No
were...
one alive remembers.
No, thanks. But there were orangeries. People
Yes.
had oranges, the posh houses, not the paupers. They just had a cow and, if they luck it, a three-legged stool and somebody to go...
Yeah. So although they would have been around, they would have been very, very highly prized and sought after, I should imagine.
and probably quite small, not like some of the plump,
Not like
manufactured ones that we've got today.
Yeah.
But if you were in, say, Spain, the common trees there, as far as I understand, are things like oranges, and they're all over the place, and you just help yourself and have an orange. You probably, just as we've got apple trees, you probably just go, another bloody orange tree, another lemon tree.
No, I could just smell that scent of an orange grove.
Absolutely.
In a valley.
But they
with
did...
the morning sun on it. Fantastic. Sorry, they did.
I was going to say, they did have them in this country, so it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Talking of oranges, of course, that's a highly individual and unusual thing to see today growing somewhere, but it would have been a crop. And number one on our list here, he says, trying to sort of get to it,
Back in the list.
is blessing the crops. And this is the sort of thing that would have gone up and down the country as people, probably from pagan times or the Anglo-Saxon times, believing that gods, which wasn't necessarily one single deity, but
No.
gods of some sort needed to be appeased, and saying, well, we bless these crops as we scatter them, or we're about to harvest them, or we're about to eat them, because you're always trying to appease the gods in case they were a little cross.
They would also be invoking the gods to
Help them.
Protect the cattle as well.
Yes, which just goes to show really how vulnerable people thought they were against all sorts of things. They must have been very aware that the elements were, and in their mind, at the mercy of the kindness or they
benevolence
were yes.
of some higher beings.
Exactly. Whereas these days we just think it's down to the weathermen sending us, they are the ones who say, it's going to rain on Tuesday, you swines.
Yes, they definitely had, well, they were forced into having a healthy respect for nature by being
And I
so
think
much in
that's
it.
very wise, really. And I think these days we think, as a sophisticated, cultivated and urbane society, that we are above all of that. And yet you only have to see, these horrific hurricanes and winds that do come, and they have come over centuries, they just show you how powerful the natural forces can be. Yeah. And we can't, you can do as much as we can to prevent it.
I was going to say technology can take you so far, but at the end of the day, nothing withstands the forces of nature.
Blessing of the seas and the fisheries, that would be another ritual. These are sort of rituals that I guess the fishermen and the fishwives and the communities would come out, because everybody benefits from these sort of things. And sailors, of course, would probably have a huge invested idea to bless the seas so that they have safe crossings, or when they're out fishing, they're not going to be swallowed up or eaten by horrible monsters. Because people saw all sorts of monsters, didn't they, in the deep?
Yes, so let's face it, the sea is one of the most visually dangerous parts of nature when it really gets going.
Oh yes, it'd be quite horrifying to be on that little boat when the waves are 30 or 50 foot high and you're up and down.
It's when you wish you were in a Disney film.
Just a piece of cartoonry. Another one on our list here to talk about is beating the bounds.
Was that where, I don't know how often they would do that.
That was like a yearly thing as far as I'm aware, and the whole point of beating the bounds was to show the boundary of the parish. And the community would get together and you would march around the boundary, because people were illiterate at those times, so they wouldn't necessarily know. So it was a visual way of showing everybody, so that nobody could encroach on other people's land. The parish was a set shape, and you'd go around.
If they did, they had no excuse to not know that they were doing it.
And certain things like key oak trees would be on, perhaps, it would show certain boundaries, key things, big stones or rocks.
I was going to say, in Lancing, there's a bound stone.
Yes, there you
Still
go.
is sitting there. It's not far from where it was originally, I think.
And at one time, the school used to be called Boundary School, didn't it?
Yeah,
Boundstone Lane or something. Yeah. Yes, a boundary. But one of the things they would do is they would take like one of the young boys or even a girl, and they would do some rather nasty things to the younger members of society, like throw them over the hedge or bash them over the head with something at certain key points. The point being was those young people would never forget what happened to them and where it happened, so they always knew where the boundary was. It was a way of really hammering home.
It really was a rough world.
Yeah, of where certain boundaries are, and they would remember it. And then as they grew up, they would repeat this to the next generation coming up. So it may sound very barbaric.
That's what I call a hard knock life.
That was a hard knock life. But they would just do certain. Probably less violent in some places than other places.
Yeah. One hopes.
Yeah, and there's plenty of people out there, I'm sure, watching this who will know a lot more about these things than we certainly do.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not difficult in my case.
No, but also one of the reasons for talking about it now, and we're sitting in the kitchen in the comfort of our home, but hopefully over the years that we do these videos and we go out in the van and stuff, we can visit some of these rituals and traditions that people get up to.
Yeah, maybe partake.
And there's lots of things that people, like bonfire night is something that's very well known.
Kind of gets taken over by fireworks.
Fireworks and and people forget what it's all about, of course. And of course, there's sort of famous times of the year, those seasonal things like Halloween and Easter and things like that. Christmas, which you can't. And we've just had Christmas, of course. And I believe, is it the 12th night tonight as we record this?
I believe so.
Or was it yesterday? Where all the Christmas decorations have to come down.
I think today they have to come down.
Right.
Yesterday might have been the 12th night. I can't remember.
Yeah.
It's 12th night from Christmas Day, isn't it?
Yeah. Is it? Yes, I think it is. So, and I think that on the first day of Christmas, my true love, that's from Christmas, not the lead up to
The
Christmas.
first day of Christmas is Christmas Day, isn't it?
Yeah, could be.
I think.
Could be.
Correct us
You
if
see,
we're wrong.
this is the funny
Quite
thing,
often
is
are.
here we are in the 21st century, and some of these very basic stuff that we've lived with all this time is very easily, because it's not being taught in anything like the way it was. They're so important to our history and our culture and our tradition that we almost now, history is being eroded so rapidly.
Rewritten.
And rewritten.
One might say.
So that we're sitting here just questioning, hang on a minute, what was
does
it?
that mean?
Because I'm sure when I was a kid, back in the 70s at primary school, or in the 60s even in primary school, I would have been taught this stuff. And the dates and the sort of meanings of it would have been much more important. But you're going back 50 odd years. Nowadays, I don't think that is taught, and I think the problem is we're in this multicultural society that our stuff, the customs and the ceremonies and the traditions that we have in England and Wales and Scotland are being watered down because we're having to embrace other populations from different parts of the world. And we're, you see it, people are frightened of saying this is what we celebrate because it's that awful thing being patriotic to your country, which people are supposed to be not patriotic, which is totally and utterly ridiculous.
It is. Any other country are allowed patriotism.
Yeah,
And feel pride in themselves.
pride of your nation and your achievements and where you've come to and your history. And these are so they are important.
Yeah. And it is such a shame that our lifestyles just don't, they've just come so far from that.
Well, I think so much has been, we've turned into this global world, and I'm arguing that actually instead of widening and getting bigger, we need to go back to being smaller communities that care for one another, and that the power, if you like, is back into a much smaller. So restore those parishes, and people on the ground in your community should be the ones who are guiding the community, rather than it from some top-down system.
Like, where have we got to?
We got to here, boys ploughing match and ploughing Monday.
Yes.
So ploughing Monday, I think, is at the beginning. It's around about now, where plough Monday, you would start ploughing your spring barley and your spring vegetables and all of that. Because I'm not.
Would they bless the ploughs as well and things like that?
I think they were, there'll be all sorts of that sort of thing. And of course, regional differences all up and down the country of how they would do it and, what day they would do it on and what, how they would mark it, kissing the plough. I think they did a kissing the plough, because that's so ingrained in the belief of superpowers, whatever it might be, some godly thing or the tree sprite or whatever it is, having an influence, and that they had to sort of bow down to it, which is, I think it must be primeval that we have this sense that outside of us is some, not necessarily benevolent, but you're having to cow. Was it Tao?
Kowtow.
Kowtow, that cow, the Tao cow. Hello, Tao cow. Got any milk for me? That you're having to sort of be a bit cautious in case you get struck down by lightning or famine or disease and things like that.
A healthy fear of the gods, I think.
Yes,
Some people might say. So, all of these different things, bread and cheese throwing, cheese rolling, or cheese racing, coracle races, carnivals. It's such a community thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I remember doing taking part in the carnivals in Titchfield when I was a little girl, shortly after we'd moved back from Saudi.
Yes.
And it was just such a lovely, vibrant thing. We'd spend all day at my nan's house, who lived in Titchfield. And my mum every year would try and get me to be, to win the carnival queen or princess or whatever. I never did.
No, but, well, you should have done. You should have been
Well,
the village
technically-
princess, of course.
Technically, I didn't live in the village itself. I lived on the outskirts of the village
Oh,
in
in that
Titchfield
case.
Common.
Yes, you can't have those common, beautiful girls winning, after all. You just want the...
Don't want the common girls, the riffraff.
No,
you know.
the beautiful common, living on the common in those little hovels that you must have lived in back then, in those days.
What? Yeah.
You want
Anyway,
just the villagers. Anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about there.
anyway, the carnivals. I loved the
Yes,
carnivals.
we
It
used to have a
was
carnival
fantastic.
here. It used to pass the door, and somebody sent me a picture from about 1910, black and white photograph. I think it was around 1910. My house, the carnival passing, making its way down to the park. And when I moved in here, for about the first 5 or 6 years, there was a carnival, and the little kids, you know, they were very small, my children at the time. We used to watch it from the window go past, just as it used to do year on year. And then it stopped. It stopped about 30 years ago, or 25 years ago. It just stopped, and you never saw it. And it was a day, okay, it was a bit of a nuisance if you wanted to get the car out, because the road was shut. But it was that community spirit. But over the years, the floats became more pathetic, and the lackluster. People weren't that involved.
Yeah,
and
well-
now, of course, it's just not a thing at all.
Yeah, because I suppose it comes down to, you know, some of the smaller businesses were just dying off even then. And it was the small businesses that would vie against each other with the different floats, wouldn't they? You know,
Yes.
the florist against the butcher, or the
Absolutely,
baker.
yeah. And those little businesses and those groups, you know, the Scouts and the Brownies and all these sort
The
of...
North Farm, the South Farm.
Yeah, would all get together and they'd all celebrate. And you were celebrating, I suppose it must have been at the end, sort of harvest time, or at the end of harvest time,
Sounds about right.
when these things would come in, and then you'd have the big carnival, and it was, you know, you'd have the fun fair would come in, and all of that.
And a bonfire.
And the
It used
bonfire.
to be in the build-up to bonfire night, if I recall.
And so I suppose you're celebrating the success that you've had, and
In the summer.
and looking forward to another year, and all of that.
Revelling in the bounty, I suppose.
And the parades that went on, and that, you know, that feeling that you were a cohesive community. But now I don't know if down in Somerset, Bridgewater, they were, up until recently, and they may still do this. I remember when I was making a video for a client that way, some years ago, there was this huge thing about the Bridgewater Carnival, and it was massive, and people would be working on these things in secret. Nobody wanted to give away what their float was going to be.
No, serious business.
So if anybody's in that area can tell me how true all of that is, I'd be fascinated to know, A, if it's still going, and B, how big a thing, because I know it was the big thing. And I think when you get into that side of the world, because in the southeast everything is just joined up, and we've got bigger towns, and, you know, the peripheral, the suburban areas are so huge. But over there, because of the Somerset levels and where you can't build, the communities are still small. And I can imagine that where you've got communities which are separate from each other, you've still got that community spirit, and then, you know, a shared thing where people come into, like, Bridgewater, the biggest town in the area, and they bring their floats and they all celebrate their own individualism, which is fantastic.
Yeah. So
What else have we got?
parades, Ebeno Horn Fair.
We keep meaning, don't we?
Yes.
Linda Kane,
For
one
5
of our
years or so now.
wonderful viewer, says, you know, you've got to get over to the Ebeno
Horn
Fair,
Fair.
where they take a ram,
Yeah, it's black ram's horns or something, and
they cook the ram for the cricket match, because
roast it, I think.
Roast it, yeah, because it's an unusual place. They've got their main cricket pitch, but there's a road that goes through it, that diverts through it, which is very strange. And there's also a lovely, and I've been there actually, is it a Sussex wildlife place? One of these what do you call them? Reserves.
Nature reserve.
Nature reserve, thank you. Yeah, you know, words.
So what's he trying to
I don't know.
say?
Yeah, just try and work out what it is I'm trying to say on the camera here. And then, so they have this. It's around mid-July sometime, and yeah, they have a cricket match, and then I think traditionally, well, I don't know.
No, but it's
never
500 years old, though, isn't it?
Yes.
This tradition of this horn fair every year. for
And we must
500
go.
years.
We must try and make it one that we go to and film this year, so that we can put it on the English
Although I
Couple.
assume the last couple of years it was a little bit hit and miss
Yes, during the COVID
during the
period.
extreme times. Morris dancing.
Ah, yes.
Morris dancing. Now
I had
know-
a Morris Traveller. I never
Yeah.
saw it dance at
No,
all.
I bet you didn't. Morris dancing, something I'm interested in, but yeah, and the old country dancing,
Yes.
the old English
You
folk
used to
dancing.
do that at school.
Yes, we used to do it at school. We used to meet up at, several schools would meet, I think at least several, and take partners and be taught in whichever school had the largest playground.
And is that the same as barn dancing, country dancing?
well,
The
English barn dancing, yes,
English
yeah.
barn dancing, not the American Yahoo!
Oh, I'd love to have a go at line dancing.
Oh, is that
it
what it's
looks
called?
amazingly fun, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, but it's funny because you...
But yeah, I mean, that comes from,
Yes.
that was taken over from here. But, I mean, folk dancing, it's very similar from here to Poland to, all across Europe at least. which
Because
is
the
not
human
surprising,
condition
really.
is that you want to dance, don't
Yes,
you?
I mean,
and
dance
play
is actually-
music and...
Yeah, dance is very, very integral to the tribal peoples,
Yeah.
And let's face it, we were all tribal people once. We still kind of are.
Yes. But I certainly going to a 1970s comprehensive boys' school, all boys' school. We didn't do any country dancing or anything like that, and that was something that was, I guess because we were boys and perhaps the teachers thought we'll never get them to do that. More sports
No, but
and things like that.
what if a girls' school had joined in?
Well, I think they were desperate to keep the boys away from the girls back in the 1970s because...
Surely controlled things like that would have been
Yeah.
better than no contact at all, because
totally
you
agree.
don't learn anything about real life unless
No.
you have a good experience.
I
with it.
think if you separate boys from girls, as you're, at that particular age at the secondary school when you're going through puberty, it's a very bad thing because you're having emotional and biological things happening to your body,
Yeah.
and you're being segregated from what it is you're attracted to, which only makes the frustration more pronounced.
It doesn't make it any easier to
No.
learn about, does it?
Absolutely, and actually, if you're in a country dancing where you're moving around and you're legitimately able to get close to members of the opposite sex.
Even if you don't fancy that one.
No, even if you don't fancy it, you're learning respect for the other person.
It's that physical interaction with, that's in a safe manner.
Absolutely.
It's something that's lacking.
And I think we could do with more of that, really.
I think so, yes.
Yeah,
it might
so-
change how the society seems to be this day and age.
And I know Morris dancing is something that a lot of people laugh at.
I know, that horrifies me, that
because
people think it's something to be ashamed of.
Yes, they think it's very odd that people dress up in very strange outfits and have, sticks and because there's so many variants to
Exactly.
Morris dancing, and I suppose
It comes down to because people don't understand where it comes from and the meaning behind it.
yes, yes, I think that's true, and in a way, I think people have made a step back from it. They've stepped away because they just feel that we're more sophisticated, and it's almost not brutal, but
Animalistic?
yes, or debased in some way, and of course we've been conditioned that we are, because it's closer to nature and whatever it is, then and people are sort of a little, we become a bit too up our own bottoms.
Yeah, we've
about it.
separated ourselves from the animal kingdom, and quite frankly, we are a part of that.
Yes.
And
And sometimes people don't know how to enjoy themselves, do they? Unless they just get so blatted, and that's you need to be inebriate in order to enjoy yourself, which is very strange. But there you are. That's that. So we're coming
so
to the end
what's
of
this
our
Stir Up
list.
Sunday then?
Stir Up Sunday, of course, I'm sure a number of women will know this from perhaps their mothers and things. Perhaps blokes might be aware of it, but I imagine it's more because stirring up is to do with the cooking, stirring up the ingredients. Now I forget what this is. There's a day, isn't it? It's not Whitsun, is it?
Is it stirring up the spirits?
No, you're stirring up the pot to make Christmas puddings and mince pies and all of that, because you've got to stir them up something like 12 weeks or whatever it is
Yes.
before Christmas to allow the alcohol to seep
The spirits,
in.
yeah.
Yes, But that spirit.
Yes.
Yes, you're stirring up those spirits. As I thought you meant stirring the...
No, I know.
Yeah. Oh, you do know.
I know that's what you thought.
Oh, okay, fair enough. And there was another point that's just gone out of my mind. But yes, that's what that's about, stirring up. And I think it's still a thing that people think about.
We just don't call it that anymore.
No, we made in our English couple here, we made a non-alcoholic Christmas pudding. And you didn't need to do it on Stir Up Sunday or weeks in advance because it had no alcohol in, and therefore you could make it a day or two before you needed it. We tried it, it was lovely.
But that does mean that you have to eat it relatively quickly because
Yes.
it won't keep...
Yes.
Because the alcohol isn't in it to preserve it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Back to Morris dancing and the old country dancing. Maypole dancing.
Oh,
You
yes.
didn't mention that.
We didn't write it down, did we?
No, we
Maypole,
forgot to.
yes.
But
And
that's something I've only seen once in the flesh. I've seen it in films and TV series or whatever.
again, it's something
I'd love
that-
to do that. To take
Yes,
part.
to take part with the ribbons and run round
do the
thing.
ribbon dance.
Yes, I mean, again, that's a very old tradition that in May you would collect the May, which is the blossom.
Yes. Usually hawthorn, but any.
Yeah, depending
brings
on
them.
what part of the country you're in and what's in flower. And you would collect all this May and deck the halls and all of that with it. And of course, they used to go out with these big oxen, chop down a big tree.
Usually a birch, one of the straight
Yes.
growing trees.
Or an ash or something. And then they would bring this thing back.
Ceremoniously.
I think they called it the stinking idol for some reason.
I think
don't
that
know.
was the Christian term for it because
Right.
it got banned in the end, the whole maypole dancing, because it was, I think it's phallic. They deem it as phallic.
Oh, the Puritans.
Yeah.
Yes, Cromwell and his mob.
Yeah, so that's, I think, why they called it that.
And then this tree would be erected up and decorated with hankies and, whatever, just fancy
Flags
stuff,
and-
flags and things. And then on May Day, for the children, it would be a big celebration on the village green.
And a lovely intricate dance to weave the ribbons around the maypole.
Absolutely.
I used to love watching.
And when I used to do my corporate videos, occasionally some clients would take me to various other clients of theirs, and we would go, and this was all over England, and I would go off and do this, and we would go through these villages somewhere up north or somewhere to the west, and all of a sudden there'd be a village. I remember one had a maypole, it was 100% in the village. I'm putting this over. It was there all the time.
Permanent.
But it's permanent. That was.
It's all right, we're nearly done.
Are we nearly done? Can I go back into my little box, please, till next time?
Maybe.
But yes, it was there, and I said, "Golly, look at that! What's that?" And the woman said, "Oh, that's their maypole." And it was a tiny little village with this. I said, "Of course it is. Of course it's their maypole." But of course, I was seeing it, say, in August or sometime, or in the winter, not in May when they'd put the ribbons out
Bedecked and all
and
of
it
that.
was all bedecked and looking
Painted.
lovely. But then we had a meal in the pub outside because we kept going back to various places several times. And there was a photograph of the kids with the maypole, and it just looked fantastic. And I thought, this is so good. Why are we not doing this? But we're all in towns now. Bigger towns are getting bigger and more dense, and the parks are not really prepared for tradition. And it's, we're just losing all of this, our identity. And nobody seems to care. Older people care because they still have one foot in the past. But my children, who are in their late 20s and 30s, they have no concept of this at all.
No,
No concept of our identity, our national customs and traditions, which have served us so well for generations, for hundreds, for 2,000 years, they've served us. And like that, it's been wiped out. And
seemingly like that in a lifetime.
well, it is. I mean, you think since the Second World War, so much of this has gone, and particularly in the last 50 years since I've been around, this stuff is like looking into a museum, and it shouldn't be. Anyway, I won't go on about it because we've been bleating on here for over 30 minutes, so sorry about that.
Quite long enough.
Quite long enough. Well, we hope you've enjoyed our little look at some of the customs, and I'm sure that you will probably know some. Perhaps you've partaken in some. Perhaps there's some favourite ones that's still around that you like to go to.
Yes, indeed.
We'd
Do
love to
tell
know
us.
about it, yeah. But anyway, that's it.
In the meantime, we'll catch you next time.
Till then,
Bye.
bye.